Anthony Davis appeared to be unable to move his right arm after this play towards the end of the first half. And in this video, we're going to talk about what I think happened and the overall prognosis here for the Lakers star. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer, and on this channel, my goal is to teach you about the medical side of the sports world. I'm recording this at halftime, and the report from Woj is that Davis appears to have suffered something called a stinger, affecting his right arm and the shoulder. And right now, of course, at halftime, it's to be determined if he comes back, but overall, good prognosis he does, just based on the typical course of a stinger. If we look at the play where this occurred, I really don't think it was the collision with Jaren Jackson Jr. that caused this. I think it was actually some friendly fire with when AD ran into Austin Reaves right there. If we think about the different mechanisms for how a stinger occurs, there has to be either some sort of trauma directly to the brachial plexus on kind of the side of the neck, there has to be a stretch to the brachial plexus, or some sort of compression to that side. So we're looking for some type of either neck load, neck trauma, or direct impact to this upper kind of right portion of Davis's shoulder. And the only thing that we really see here is in this position as Davis comes down, the left side of his head kind of runs into Austin Reaves' shoulder. What that's going to do is it pushes Davis's neck back into a little bit of extension, meaning it straightens back, and then lateral bending over that right side, which is likely when we got some transient compression and irritation of those nerves, either in the brachial plexus or coming out of the neck. But there really wasn't anything from Jaren Jackson. There was no real collision here. There was no like kind of impact or shot that we could directly see to Davis. This elbow that came in here didn't even hit Davis. So really, I think it was just this friendly fire from right there running into Austin Reaves. After that contact with Reaves, there is this little bit of a moment where Davis is reaching out, but you can see he's already showing a face like he's in some discomfort. And again, there's no real impact to the neck. There's no impact to that part of the shoulder from Jaren Jackson. So likely the injury had already occurred. And then of course we saw Davis mouthing that he couldn't move his arm, which of course is concerning for a nerve injury affecting the muscles. As Davis was walking off the court, we can see him holding and supporting his right arm. And the other interesting little thing to point to here is kind of where Davis seems to be grabbing. He's grabbing at more his biceps. He's grabbing a little bit higher up in the arm, which is relevant for the key nerves that are often injured with a stinger. Looking at our biodigital anatomy tool here, a stinger is a temporary, transient, unilateral, meaning only affecting one side, injury to the nerves, typically the nerves of the brachial plexus. When we break down just our neural axis, our nerve anatomy, of course, we have the spinal cord that's going down the cervical spine, and then coming out of the spinal cord, going through the little vertebral foramen and the vertebral bodies, we have all of our spinal nerve roots. Those nerve roots come together to form this collection of nerves called the brachial plexus. It's very complex. There's multiple cervical nerve roots kind of contributing to this, and it's this interwoven area of the nerves that eventually spread off and go on down to control the sensation and the muscle strength in our upper limb. So this whole kind of region up here is going to be considered the brachial plexus. A true stinger is some injury to this area of the nerves in the brachial plexus. And it's kind of like a bruise to the nerve. If you've ever hit your funny bone on a table, that's the equivalent of a stinger, except it's in this location up at the neck as opposed to down at the elbow. Now, it's also possible, of course, that people can have injury to the nerve roots whenever they come out of the spinal cord over here, kind of a radiculopathy, for example, or some radiculitis, meaning irritation of this nerve root. But classically stinger, think of an injury to the brachial plexus. As I mentioned, Davis was grabbing higher up on his shoulder, on his arm, and that's because stingers often affect the C5 and C6 cervical nerve roots, so cervical nerve root 5 and 6. And those nerves innervate the more upper or proximal muscles in the arm. So classically, the deltoid and the biceps. Same with the sensation of those nerve roots. So typically people will notice more weakness through the shoulder and kind of this numbness in the shoulder because of that area where a stinger typically affects. It's usually not down lower in the hand like C7, C8, it's usually that higher area, C5, C6. And remember, these nerves have to get bruised or stretched in some way. And so either that can be done by the head kind of flexing down this way and just squeezing and compressing those nerves together. It can happen if there's tension, so if the head gets bent the other way, or if there's just a direct blow to this region of the brachial plexus causing a temporary stun of those nerves. So here with Davis, as he comes down on this play, everything's normal, everything looks good, but then he gets this shot incidentally from Austin Reaves, which is going to force his neck backwards into this sort of awkward position. That likely is when there was some temporary irritation or kind of stunning of those nerves having come out of the spinal cord. The good news here is that by definition, a stinger is a temporary phenomenon, and by far and away the majority of them will resolve within a few minutes to a few seconds. And so it's very likely that Davis is able to come back for the second half. But of course, we've seen other examples of athletes like Chris Paul in previous playoffs where sometimes these stingers can recur. And if these stingers do recur, then it's a much more prolonged recovery in terms of having to do evaluation and really look at, is there something with the anatomy going on that makes you more predisposed to these stingers? The criteria to come back, you have to have normal strength, normal exam, good function in the muscles, and good normal sensation to suggest that that nerve is no longer being injured. But this isn't typically like a true structural thing. Like, it's better that this happened than something like a shoulder subluxation or shoulder dislocation. Obviously, those nerves might be a little bit more flared up, irritated to where he could be more prone to another stinger. But otherwise, I would not think of this as like a structurally damaged injury to Davis's right shoulder. It might be a little bit sore still as things kind of play out here, but this shouldn't hopefully be a big long thing term for him to worry about. So hopefully we see Davis back out there on the court for the start of the second half. I hope this video was educational to learn a little bit about our nerve anatomy and exactly what's going on when you have a stinger. Remember, think of it like hitting your funny bone nerve, but it's the nerves in the neck after they've left the spinal cord and before they get out to the muscles. Typically affect C5, C6, which are going to be the more proximal muscles like the muscle groups in the shoulder and the upper arm. Thanks as always for watching. Let me know any questions or comments down below. And until next time, we'll see you later.